out while we still have time. This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast with Michael Boldea.
All right. Well, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. Another week has come and gone, and we are back. We are live, and we're ready to tackle the uncomfortable realities of the world we're living in. This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast. I am Michael Boldea, your humble host, and I get the feeling that for the foreseeable future, there will be no such thing as a slow news week. We had a great trip to Indiana. Hello to all of you who came out to the meeting or meetings, because we had multiple meetings. There were 3 meetings, and I ran into a lot of people who actually listened to this program or they listened to the recording afterwards. Because you never know. You never know who's listening. You never know who's out there. So I appreciate you coming up to me and shaking my hand and having a little conversation, and I'm glad you enjoy the program. Today was a gloomy day here in Wisconsin. It's been raining for the past couple of days, and every time it rains, I feel like an old man because my arthritis kicks in. And that sounds horrible when you say, my arthritis is kicking in, but it is. And it's been a while since I felt this kind of pain. I haven't had a gout attack, thankfully, in a very long time. But the arthritis still bugs me whenever it's humid, whenever it rains a lot. It's just one of those things. And I know that it's odd for a 40-something-year-old to have arthritis, but I get the feeling that as time goes by and the older I get, the more of these aches and pains I will have to contend with. Because it's part of this life. It's part of the human condition. It's part of the human existence. And if we felt too comfortable here, if we enjoyed this place too much, then perhaps we'd lose sight of the fact that this isn't home. We have no continuing city here. We don't belong here for the long term. We're here temporarily, some of us very temporarily. And as long as we're here, while we are here, while we still have breath, while God still grants us the gift of life, our singular duty is to bring glory to His name by our words, by our actions, by the things we do. By the love we show, by the grace we extend, by the peace we possess. Because whether we want to acknowledge it or not, the world is on fire. And tempers are flaring, and men are losing their minds. And that was just Wednesday. So it's very necessary for us as believers to possess the peace of Christ, to possess the peace that only He can give us. Because He promised, He says, I give you peace, but not as the world gives you. See, the world's peace disintegrates at the first sign of chaos. The world's peace disintegrates at the first sign of uncertainty. The world's peace disintegrates at the first sign of calamity. But the peace that gives us does not disintegrate in the face of these things. The peace that Christ gives us is constant and continual. It's tethered in eternity. It's tethered in Him. So it's not contingent on external factors. The peace that Christ gives us is not contingent on whether or not you got your raise this year. The peace that Christ gives us is not contingent on whether or not you were able to upgrade to a newer car. The peace that Christ gives us isn't even contingent on whether or not the world's at war or it's at peace. The world's always been at war. It's just different parts of the world. There's always a war going on some continent, in some nation, whether a civil war, war among nations, a world war. There's always war going on. And so if you let that rob you of your peace, if you let that rob you of your joy, if you let that rob you of that which Jesus gave you, that surpasses the peace and the joy of men, then I question whether or not you truly have the peace of Christ. Because even with everything that's going on, perfectly honest with you, I am at peace. Because I know that my Redeemer lives. And I know that whether everyone else is doing well or everyone else is doing horribly, I am under the shadow of His wing. I am under His protection. I am under His guidance. He will keep me. He will keep my feet on the narrow path. He will keep me from falling. He will keep me from bruising myself. He will keep me from going hungry. I trust in my Father, and He is a good Father. And what's very important for us to remember, especially in this season where everything is up in the air, where everything is so uncertain, is that He is an omnipotent Father. He is all-powerful. See, sometimes human beings have the best of intentions, but they don't have the power to follow through. They want to do great things. They want to do great exploits. They want to feed 1 million people. But they don't have the resources to follow through with their good intentions. God is omnipotent. God is able to follow through on His promises. God is able to follow through on that which He said He would do for His children. And this is the thing that we must stand on. This is the thing that we must cling to. The fact that an omnipotent God promised that He would be with us. The fact that an omnipotent God promised that He would care and provide for us no matter what. There was no contingency there. There was no, I'll provide for you as long as you're able to find food at the local Pick and Save or the Kroger's or the Piggly Wigglies. He didn't qualify His statement. He says, I will keep you. I will protect you. I will be there for you in your hour of need. And I don't know who this is for because I didn't intend to start out the program this way. But here we are, and this is for somebody that's listening to my voice right now that's beginning to doubt because of the circumstances that they find themselves in. Do not doubt either the goodness of the Father, the intentions that the Father has towards you, or the ability of the Father to carry out the good intentions that He has towards you. Do not allow doubt to plant a seed in your heart. Do not allow doubt to take root there, because doubt does not belong in the heart of a believer. Uncertainty does not belong in the heart of a believer. Fear does not belong in the heart of a believer. We are His and He is ours. And He is able to do all things. All things doesn't mean some things. All things mean all things. See, I know that we're living in an age where we like to play with the definition of words. It's very popular nowadays. Apparently, he can be she and she can be he and they can be it, whatever. It's getting so complicated. You need to carry a notebook with you just to figure out what people are trying to say. But God doesn't mince words. God says what He means. God is not functionally retarded like some of these people that are trying to invent words to define themselves in a manner in which is new to humanity. And it's just a cry for help. God has always been very clear. He's been very clear about His ability to protect His children. He's been very clear about His ability to provide for His children. And He's been very clear as to what His expectation of His children is when they go through hardships and trials. we ought not to fear. We ought not to shrink back. We ought not to be silent. We ought not to run away. And yes, I understand the feeling, because I felt it, and I still feel it, that feeling like things were about to crumble all around you. And I've talked to a lot of friends, and they've never in their lives felt anything even remotely close to this. Even though, hey, consumer, expectations higher than ever. Everybody's optimistic. And yet that feeling of dread sticks around. That feeling of dread, consumers are optimistic. Who was it? Amazon blew past their expected earnings. Google blew past their expected earnings. Pop the champagne or the apple cider. We're going to party because everybody's on the right track. And yet that feeling of dread remains. And you know what feeling I'm talking about? That feeling, that emptiness in the pit of your stomach. And I would wager that it will only intensify and it will only grow, because though seemingly consumers are optimistic, things will not be getting any better anytime soon. And those who were hoping that we would see some sort of return to normalcy, to decency, to something resembling morality, are beginning to feel disappointment. And many are becoming disillusioned. This is why I kept urging you throughout these months to temper your expectations. Again, comparatively speaking, much better than the alternative. Some years ago, and I know this is going to sound like an odd segue, but there's a point here. Some years ago, there's a man that got his hand caught in some rock. Some rock fell on his hand or on his arm, something along those lines. They made a movie about this guy, 137 hours or 27, a lot of hours. But the man was faced with the very real decision of whether he would cut off his own arm or lay down and die the rocks. None of these decisions are appealing, but one of them gave the man a chance for survival. The man ended up sawing off his own arm, pocket knife, I believe. And he survived. This is sort of how I look at what's happening in this nation. Either way wouldn't have been pretty, but one at least gives us a chance of survival. Again, if your expectations were tempered, if you hadn't gotten on the bandwagon of Cyrus and white horses, then perhaps you wouldn't be suffering such tremendous disappointment as I'm getting emails. Oh, this is the end. It's not the end. Because not everything you expected to get done got done in the first 100 days. It's not the end. But perhaps your expectations were a little unrealistic, as were the promises, of course. But that's another story altogether. Look, the objective was, and to a certain extent it still is, because the situation can be remedied. And I guess the objective will always be, it's a singular thing. Press your advantage. When an advantage presents itself, press it. If your enemy negotiate once they've lost the battle and you have your boot on your enemy's neck, that is not the time for you to take the boot off and say, okay, let's deal. Because you know full well, Had the situation been reversed, they would laugh in your face when you told them you wanted to deal. They would laugh in your face when you told them, well, yeah, we just want to get along. We just want to come together. Or whatever else cliched idiocy they like throwing around. How come the losing side is always so conciliatory? That's when everybody wants to work together. We have to find common ground. We have to understand and accept our differences. No, you've lost. There is consequence to losing. It means you no longer have a say in what happens until the next election, when you have another opportunity to talk a majority into voting for your agenda, I guess. Like I said, I know this is a strange way of starting off the program, and it's going to get stranger because something's been bugging me this whole week. And before I start calling out individuals on Facebook, I thought I'd give one last warning on here, just so that my wall doesn't get populated with this sort of lunacy anymore, because it's downright irritating. So I got a Facebook, I got on Facebook this week. I don't get on Facebook a lot. Those of you that are my air quotes Facebook friends know how often I pop on there. Well, I got on. Oh, I don't know, just because I had a few extra minutes. So once in a few days, maybe once a week, if I have a few minutes to spare between projects, I'll go on Facebook. And one of these days, the first thing to assault my eyes was a plea: pray for pastors and leaders because they were under attack. And I agree with the basic premise of this hypothesis, but there was a link to an article about a pastor who had to resign from his church because he got caught committing adultery with his goddaughter, and his wife texted the entire church body as to his infidelity. I'm sorry, that's not persecution. I'm sorry, that's not an attack of the enemy. I got so razzled by this that I wanted to make sure it was true. Because it sounds so off and it sounds so out of this world. I actually took the time to confirm that this story was true. And it is. A pastor who was mentored by well-known preacher Bishop T.D. Jakes has now officially resigned from his leadership position following allegations that he had an affair with his goddaughter. Yes, the deafening silence was on purpose. The church announced that Hill submitted a letter of resignation and that after weeks of counseling, the Colorado pastor and his wife of 20 years, Joy, will be separating. Joy broke the news of the affair by sending a group text to church members. Chris Hill is taking several weeks away from the church to work on family issues. We feel that it would be inappropriate for us to comment in more detail at this time, but we ask you to join us in prayer for the family, the church told CBN, that is the Christian Broadcasting Network. As more information becomes available, we will keep our church members updated, and our services are continuing as scheduled, as are the mandatory offerings. I included the mandatory offering thing in there, by the way. Don't. That wasn't in the article. That was all me. What more information needs to be made available? The man committed adultery on his wife with his goddaughter. His wife found out. and she group tested the entire church membership. Welcome to modern day Christianity. So again, this was like the shortest article that I could find on this entire drama. But what really got my goat was the idea that this man's adultery with his own goddaughter of all people was somehow a demonic attack or was a persecution that we needed to pray against or that we needed to pray away. The man chose sin over fidelity to God's commands. The man chose sin over fidelity to his own vows. The man chose sin over fidelity to the way of Christ. If I'm going to pray for anything, it's that God humble him and stir him to repentance. But come on, this wasn't a spiritual attack. This isn't something we should pray away or be empathetic about because he was persecuted. This is something we should condemn. And the fact that the church asked for his resignation, you know what, is a good start. I'm sick and tired of foolish men making foolish choices and bringing shame to the household of faith by the choices they make, then blaming the devil for it, and then have well-meaning believers ask for a prayer chain against attacks. Blood of Jesus on you, you adulterous snail. You chose sin. You chose to give in to temptation. You chose not to walk away. You chose to be alone with that woman. You chose to be flattered by her compliments. You chose to let it get physical. Chose to fall into sin. Look, the devil's job is to extend the silver platter. That's what he does. He's well known for it. You make the choice whether or not you're going to reach and take what he is offering. So, yeah, if I see another one of those pray for the pastors under attack posts with a link to the guy that got caught engaging in sexual congress with his own goddaughter, I'm going to call you out. And I'm going to do it harshly. Probably in the harshest way I'm capable of mustering. And I know I can muster harshness. We need to become adults once in a while. We need to grow up and realize that there's no excuse. There's no excuse for this kind of behavior in the church. Never mind pastors, nobody in the church should be doing this sort of thing. First and foremost, because you fear God. Then because you love your spouse. Then because you took a vow. And stop calling it persecution. Look, if you're confused about the definition of persecution, then look it up. Guys who commit adultery and get caught are not being persecuted. People who are being beheaded and crucified and set on fire and torn asunder for the cause of Christ, those are being persecuted. To call a man who has no self-control and who gives in to his lust persecuted is to both diminish and degrade every one of those believers suffering true persecution today. Look, what happened to wisdom? What happened to discernment? What happened to not putting yourself in a situation that might endanger your eternal soul? What happened to not putting yourself in a situation that might tempt you into doing something foolish? Look, in a time where false allegations are abundant, why would you put yourself in a situation like this? Especially being a pastor, especially being an elder, especially being a deacon, especially being someone in authority in the house of God. It just makes me angry. It gets to me because these things are being exposed more and more, and everything gets put and placed under the umbrella of persecution when it isn't. Oh yeah, Benny Hinn's financial offices got raided by the feds. Persecution! Seriously, am I supposed to pray for Benny too now because he's being persecuted? Again, I had to confirm this one too. And yes, criminal investigators, keep that in mind, criminal investigators from the Internal Revenue Service and the U.S. Postal Service raided the Grapevine, Texas offices of televangelist Benny the Hinn on Wednesday afternoon. Is famous for his stadium-filling miracle crusades. At these revival-style events held worldwide, Hinn claims to use special supernatural power to heal people suffering from terminal diseases and various handicaps. Several IRS and Postal Service agents participated in the Wednesday raid. The investigators entered Hinn's offices, then left with boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. Oh. See, for people who pride themselves in being preachers of the word and being men of the book and being those who know both the word and the mind of God himself, these guys, I guess, glossed over the verse that says, beware your sin shall find you out. It's in the book. You should have known about it. Everything that is hidden will be brought to the light. So if you are doing something that you don't want to be brought to the light, you need to stop doing it. You need to repent. You need to turn your face towards Christ and humble yourself at the foot of the cross, because your sin will find you out, whatever it might be. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. Maybe it's when you have a huge ministry and you fly around in a private jet. Then criminal investigators raid your financial offices and remove boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. The investigators then placed the boxes on trucks at the scene. Officials offered few details about the scope of the investigation. Today, we are here on official business. IRS Criminal Investigation Special Agent Michael Morsley told the flock of reporters who gathered to watch the slow-moving raid. So who's first on the scene after the investigators? The reporters, who are there to do what? Report that a supposed man of God is getting raided by criminal investigators, and I hazard to guess where there's smoke, there's going to be a brush fire. Mosley continued, and he said this: we are primarily investigating Title 26, which is tax evasion and general fraud against the government. We are conducting a search warrant on the premises. Basically, that's all I can tell you today, mostly added. An unidentified federal employee told WFAA, which is, I guess, a news station, that the investigation into potentially illegal activities by Hinn had been extensive prior to Wednesday. Twitter feed, a never-ending series of Benny Hinn advertisements intermingled with Bible verses and uplifting sayings, offers no information on the federal investigation. Why would it? Reports suggest that Hinn is currently in France, and he will likely come onto his TV show from a remote location now and say that he was moved by the Spirit to resettle in a non-extradition country. Boy, oh boy. A report at Patheos, a non-denominational religious website, suggests that Hinn or his organization may have removed a tweet about his visit to France. The author of the Patheos report, Grove City College psychology professor Warren Throckmorton, told the Daily Caller that religious groups often face little scrutiny about their revenues. Religious organizations are not required to be as transparent as other nonprofits. And yet we must be. This is the takeaway. This is the lesson. Just because you're not required to be transparent doesn't mean you shouldn't be transparent. Aha! Hinn is innocent until proven guilty, but hopefully this investigation will answer many questions about Hinn's ministry which have been raised over the years. Hinn has a reputation for living a lavish, fancy life. He flies in a private jet and stays in the finest hotels worldwide. And why wouldn't he? He is, of course, Benny Hinn. The Senate Finance Committee investigated and ultimately cleared Hinn and half a dozen other pastors in 2007. The IRS also investigated Hinn in 2005. You'd think that if you were the target of a congressional probe, you'd get your stuff in order, wouldn't you? Unbelievable. In 1999, Hinn declared that he was totally going to build a $30 million center dedicated to faith healing. He raised several $1 million, however, the center never materialized. Well, because it's a center for faith healing, so you must see it by faith. It's just a grass field. And if you imagine it, it is there. By faith, you will see the healing center. In 2013, Hinn remarried his wife, Suzanne, after she had filed for divorce in 2010. Aha! The ceremony took place in Orlando, Florida, at the Holy Land Experience, a Christian theme park. Because what better place for a sham marriage than a Christian theme park? Featuring a replica of Jerusalem's Old Testament-era temple, restaurants, shops, and a 2,000-seat auditorium. Hinn's long-running television program, This Is Your Day, is among the most watched Christian TV programming on earth. And that is scary, is it not? Hinn has repeatedly denied accusations of fraud and tax evasion. And yet, criminal investigators raided his financial offices. So that's happening. Is that persecution too? Look, if you're a preacher or an evangelist, it doesn't mean that you're above the law. It doesn't mean that you can spend God's money on yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't have to pay your taxes, or as Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. They're persecuting Brother Benny. No, they're not persecuting. They investigated the potentiality of criminality and discovered that there was enough evidence of criminality wherein it warranted raiding his financial offices. So, where this goes from here, I guess we shall wait and see. But I know that there will be those who will say that if we don't defend Brother Benny now, what are you going to do when they come after you or other ministries? Well, if they're involved in criminal enterprises, then they deserve to be pursued. This is why we have an independent bookkeeper who takes care of all the finances. This is why our books are open. This is why we're above board with everything. Because we want to flee even the appearance of evil. No, organizations are not mandated to be transparent. But you know what? We choose to be transparent because there is nothing to hide. Transparency is a good thing, especially in ministry, especially when there's a high dollar amount going through an organization. See, you're naturally suspicious when you hear that a church or a ministry or an evangelist is trying to squirrel away their books. They're trying to not give officials what they ask for. They're trying to sort of twist their income, whatever it is. Why all the machinations? If you're above board, then you're above board. Be transparent. This is what came in. This is what went to the poor. The end. But see, it's hard to show that a substantial amount went to the poor when the poor are last on the list, when you've got the private jets and the mansions and the fanciest hotels as a ministry priority before you have the widow and the orphan and the hungry and the naked. That's the depressing thing. That's, in my eyes, the criminal thing. Your ministry is prioritized in such a way where only pennies on the dollar go to helping the poor, where 85% of what comes in is overhead. And I guarantee you, some of these big ministries, 85% is generous. I'm thinking more between 90 and 95. Because once you stick your hand into the jar of honey and you see that it tastes sweet, if not for the fear of God in your heart, if not for the knowledge that it's God's money and you're supposed to be wise with it and actually do something good with it, your hand will keep returning to the honey jar until there's no honey left. I wish I could muster empathy at this point for Brother Benny, but I'm fresh out. Because ministries such as his, having made the choices that they made, that they would take money from the most desperate believers, that they would take from the widows and the impoverished by promising them that they'd get a green handkerchief in the mail and all their bills would get paid by Jesus, or that they could light their bills on fire only to find out that they were sued. I have no empathy for people who brought shame to the household of faith and to the name of God by their greedy actions. who fleeced the sheep so often that the sheep don't know what it is to have wool anymore. I have no empathy for that. I have no empathy for someone who built a kingdom for themselves and disregarded the poor altogether. I have no empathy for that. So it's a wait and see sort of thing, but again, if I were a betting man, you know what they say, third time's the charm. And it's just going to be another bruise, man. It's just going to be another black eye for the church, because all you Christians, all you preachers, all you evangelists, just greedy little piggies trying to one-up each other on your private jets. Not all of us. Not all of us. There are some who still hold to the principles of the gospel. There are some who actually still, feed the hungry and care for the orphan and the widow. There are some who go to great lengths not to be a burden on the ministry. And so they found other means of earning a living to supplement their income. There's still some of those out there. I know a couple. It doesn't mean that the wolves won't come out of the woodwork. It doesn't mean that the godless won't point their fingers and laugh and mock and do what the godless do. And it's just sad, because I don't know if you're seeing it, but there's this all-out attack on every front. Look, last week we were together, and I told you they would. I told you they would. I didn't think it would happen this soon, but I told you they would come out knives a-flutter for the next high-profile personality in conservatism. And I guess they try to go after Sean Hannity. And if you don't know who Sean Hannity is, decent enough guy from what I can tell. But a woman came out and sort of hinted at some sort of, inappropriate behavior. And he did what an innocent man ought to do. He said, I'm going to sue you. Either prove this in court or shut up and go away. Anger is justified. Look, there are women out there who have given more sailors permission to come aboard than a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. And so these types of women have no qualms about accusing a man, any man, of something inappropriate. They don't care about their own reputations. And if they have no self-worth, if they don't care about their own reputations, what makes you think they're going to care that they're besmirching the character of an innocent person? Or that person has children who might see these allegations on television? Or that person has a wife who might see these allegations on television? Care? They're out for blood, and if they think they can make a little money and take down another, elephant, then they're going to do it. But see, here's the amazing thing. Once Sean Hannity threatened a lawsuit, the woman backed off her statement quite readily because she knew it was all a lie. And there was no way she was going to testify under oath about something she knew to be a demonstrable lie. Look, we're living in such an overly sensitive society. Everything's either sexist or racist or misogynist or something. Why'd you pick the Twinkie and not the Chocodile? Are you a racist? No, I just like Twinkies. I mean, I don't have a problem with chocodiles, but I felt like a Twinkie. Nope, you must be a racist. All this nonsense. This hypersensitivity. Where you say good morning to somebody, what do you mean by that? I didn't mean anything. I simply meant good morning. How are you? What do you mean, how am I? Don't I look fine? Is there some hidden barb in there? No, I just inquired about how you were doing. What do you care? Are you writing a book? So whatever you say, however you play it, they're going to find a reason to be upset. They're going to find a reason to be unhappy, because if they're not perpetually unhappy and bitter, it destroys their narrative. And so they're always going to find something to be bitter about. They're always going to find something to be unhappy about. And it's really easy to sink to their level. It's really easy to adopt that same mindset where you're suspicious of everyone and you think everyone meant the worst possible thing they could mean by something they said offhandedly. That's not the kind of life I want to live. That's not the kind of attitude I want to have. Look, even if someone comes out and actually says something mean-spirited, hey, Mike, you're getting a big, little fat. I take it the best way possible. Well, they're concerned about my welfare and my health. That's a nice person there. But see, we can't jump to the extreme of believing that anybody that says anything to us means it in the worst possible context. Because that means we're just looking to be offended. We're just looking to ruin our day. To rise above this kind of nonsense, because it's getting worse and worse. And one of the most important things that we need to do is identify the crazy, identify the functionally retarded, and clip their wings. Not give them any credence, not give them any airtime. Not try to understand their point of view. If you think that your 6-year-old is a boy because she said she felt like a boy once, then you need to be institutionalized. Just because a kid says they feel like something, you don't go pumping estrogen into them and start dressing them in dresses. But this is the foolishness that we've come to as a society. This is the kind of nonsense that we're being barraged with. And I don't know if it's fear, but man, normal people aren't standing up and going, that's stupid. Normal people aren't saying that's wrong. See, sometimes silence is criminal. And when our silence enables disturbed people to project their own lunacy on innocent children, I don't know how we're going to wash our hands of this. Because this thing is spiking. It's out of control. I ran into a lady talking to another lady in a store 2 days ago, asking what size do you think an 8-year-old boy would wear in a dress. And I sort of did a double take because I'm just standing there trying to buy my daughter some socks. I didn't think I heard it right at first. And again, context. I live in Wisconsin. This is happening everywhere. Because rational, reasonable, logical people aren't saying, hey, flag on the play. This is kind of nutty. Just a wee bit. But thank you for playing. So I don't know where I was going with this other than just I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because rather than be the voice of reason amidst the generation of unreasonable people, rather than be the voice of logic amidst the generation of people for whom logic is alien, we're having to discuss teachers who were mentored by none other than T.D. Jakes committing adultery with their goddaughters, and Benny Hinn having criminal investigators raiding his financial offices. These were the topics of the day, because this is the reality that the so-called church is living. And you wonder why the world's getting darker and darker? You wonder why everything feels like it's getting ready to crumble all around us? Because the church isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. At least a very large percentage of it. And one of these days, God will hold us to account. One of these days, we will have to answer for why we didn't do what we knew was our duty to do. And I know full well that any excuse we might come up with, any justification we think we might have, will be insufficient. Couple everything that's happening nationally with everything that's happening internationally, with North Korea still unpredictable and crazy and planning for a war they know they can't win. And you can see how it's wisdom itself to perhaps spend a little more time on our knees, crying out to God, and a little less time doing all the other things. The hour is late. This much we know. What tomorrow holds, that's God territory. But what we can take to the bank, what we know with certainty, is that the God who sees into tomorrow has already prepared a place of refuge and a place of shelter for his children. The God who sees into tomorrow has already prepared provision for those who follow after him faithfully. And with that, I thank you for joining us tonight. I thank you for taking the time to fellowship. And next week, Lord willing, we will be here once more. We will be here live and hopefully discuss something new. Until then, God bless you and keep you. And Gino, it's all yours.
Thank you, brother. Well, it was a very enlightening broadcast tonight, and I completely concur with Mike. It's very tragic in the sense that these ministries and ministers who should be examples for the Lord's kingdom, whether it's fraudulently taking people's not appropriating it properly, or pastors falling in adultery, but it's just the times we're living in, and it's a very sad thing. And totally agree with Mike. It's not persecution, it's moral failing. And if you're going to be in the ministry and you're going to speak on behalf of the Lord, the first thing he wants is a clean life. First thing he wants is we live what we preach. And that's always been, Dmitry Duduman was absolutely emphatic about that. And I know Michael's that way as well, because I traveled with Mike. He's still traveling with him, going on 20 years. And so with that, this message will be online by Monday on the YouTube channel. Please get the word out to get it out because I think it holds a lot of good truth in it, and I think it will help people put their eyes more on Jesus and on walking with him. God bless you. Thank you for listening to today's broadcast, The Light of Truth with Michael Boldea. If you would like to order a copy of today's broadcast, please visit our website at handofhelp.com. If you have questions about our ministry, you can email us at handofhelpoffice@aol.com or simply call us at 920-206-9910. God bless you.